Welcome to the Farming on Purpose podcast, a podcast for farmers and ranchers ready to shift for a stronger future. Today's challenges in agriculture are new, but the grit and determination required to be successful are not. On the Farming on Purpose podcast, you'll hear how producers of all sizes and practices are moving mountains for things they believe in, all in the name of an industry that keeps growing and innovating for a stronger food system and stronger farm families. I'm your host, Lexi Wright, and I'm excited to discuss where producers are finding success, challenging the status quo, striving for better, and keeping our heritage alive, all while producing the food we depend on.
Can we take just a second to talk about your business? You already know your business inside and out. You've built something worth talking about. But when it comes to marketing, it can feel like you're stuck. You don't know what to say, where to show up, or how to turn followers into customers. I know because I've been there. That's why I created the 8-hour marketing plan class. Think of it as your personal roadmap built just for you in just one day of focused action. You bring your passion and your business know-how and use our step-by-step video process to craft your strategy to help you reach the right people and grow your business. This process helps you get around second-guessing, wasted time, and feeling overwhelmed. We create a clear plan that fits your business, your life, and gets results. You're the expert in what you do. Let us help you build a plan to show it off. Jump into the 8-hour marketing plan class at backpocketsocial.com/8hours. That's backpocketsocial.com/8hours.
Welcome back to Farming on Purpose. Today I have Madi Skubal with me, and Madi is a fourth-generation dairy farmer in Southeast Iowa. She and her dad and some hired help milk 150 Holsteins and then ship their milk to Prairie Farms Dairy. And they also raise all your heifers on site and calve at their farm as well. So Madi, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to learn more about what you do and how you guys have grown your operation to this point. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us all just a little bit more about you and your family and what your operation looks like?
Yeah. So I was born and raised on the dairy. I'm fourth generation. My dad obviously is the third. I would say our farm family dynamics are a little bit different than probably other dairy farms. My grandpa had to sell out because of health problems. So our farm kind of was animal free for a while because it happened right when my dad was in high school. So, and also that was, kind of when farming, no matter your industry, was hard times back in the 70s and 80s. So my grandpa sold the cows, but he knew that my dad and uncle really wanted to farm. So he kept the buildings, the machinery and stuff. Then my dad and uncle both went to college, kind of worked off the farm at other dairies around the country. My dad was in Florida for a while. And then they both came home, bought more cows, and started the farm back up again. And then kind of the 90s hit and another small recession for dairy. So my uncle decided that he would go pursue a different area. So now he works out on the East Coast. And then my dad just started to run the dairy by himself. Then he'd hire usually one full-time person. And then between a few part-time, or my mom was a huge help. But my mom came from downtown Atlanta. So her coming to the dairy was very different for her. So she knew when she was getting married that she was going to be working full time on the dairy and raising us. So between them, they did the dairy, upgraded from the old style parlor that we had to what we have now. And then it's me and my 3 brothers, but my closest brother my age actually moved to Australia. So he decided that farming wasn't for him. And my 2 younger brothers, they're twins. They're still kind of deciding what they want to do. They're only 20, so they have a lot of time. And then I had decided my freshman year of college that I wanted to come home. I missed it. Living in the city was really not for me. So I came home at Christmas break and told my dad, hey, I don't want to major in this anymore. I want to transfer colleges and major in dairy science. And he was like, okay, if that's what you want. I'm like, all right, here we go.
Wow. Well, it sounds like that was kind of a big decision for you where you changed trajectory. Was it just you knew at that point, or what kind of made that decision for you?
I feel like dairy kids kind of go, we have like two options. Like either we love the farm and we're committed to it because it's like, depending on your times, we get up at 3 a.m. for us is our time. And so when I was in high school, I was like, I'm not doing that the rest of my life. Like, heck no. And then the other side is dairy kids are like, we liked it, but we're not going to come home to it. Well, I was kind of like torn, but then after I was away from it, I really missed it. And I was active when I was in high school. I showed 4-H. And so I was on the dairy doing that. And I still had to help just because that was part of growing up on the farm, you help. But I also got paid too. Dad let us be employees. So I was pretty well versed, like immersed into the dairy. And so then when I was gone, I did miss it. And my family, we're a very close knit family. We all grew up very close. All my aunts and uncles were not far from us, my cousins. So I also was looking at it as in, depending on the job that I got after college with the major I had first pursued, I knew I wouldn't probably end up in Iowa. And so I was like, family is really important to me and having them close. And so that was another big reason that I also changed my major.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like your farm has like a very unique background where it was empty for a while and then restarted. Was that, what kind of things did that do for the business? Was there things that you guys changed because of that, or what kind of things did you do differently?
Yeah. So my grandpa was farming. So we're in Washington County, Iowa. So we're in a huge hog producing county, hog and turkey. So we're the only dairies. So when my grandpa had the farm, he had kind of dairy was his main passion. He loved the cows. He also raised some beef cows. He had hogs out on pasture, and he also had turkeys too. So my dad and grandpa and uncle and aunts, they grew up with kind of that old style farm. And then when my dad and uncle got it, my dad does not like birds. And he gave me that trait. I am not a bird person. I will gladly buy my eggs for the $6.50 at the store. I'm not a huge chicken or turkey person. So my dad decided that he was just going to do straight dairy. He didn't want to diversify in that way. He wanted to put all this focus on that. So he did change around some of the barns. One of our sheds that is now our heifer facility was where my grandpa kept all the turkeys. So he changed some of that kind of stuff around. And then obviously he updated the parlor system once my uncle decided he didn't want to stay. And so we've been in that parlor since 99 is when our first milking was Christmas Day of 99. And so when people come and see the parlor, they're like, oh, how new is this? And I'm like, actually, it's like over 30, like almost 30 years old. And we just, dad's very good at keeping equipment good and nice to use over time. So, slowly the farm has changed. We took down our silos and our harvester. We use all silage bags now. So we hadn't used them for a long time. And then it was just getting to the point where we needed to upgrade, because they were getting unsafe. So we tore those down. And that was a hard day for my grandpa to come and watch, because my great grandpa built the stave. And then my grandpa, one of his first big purchases when he bought the farm was putting up the harvester. Mm-hmm. And so he came and, watched us when we tore it down, that was an experience tearing down an 80-foot silo. But, yeah, it was just watching the farm, how we've changed so much. And that was such a big change for me, because I've seen, renovated buildings. And I always think it's kind of cool because we're still keeping the original building, but just stuff changes. But this was something that I was like, oh, we're taking a part of like the farm away for good. So, but again, we use silage bags. So like my dad always makes sure that we're keeping up and progressing with the times instead of just trying to make the old stuff work. He wants to make sure that first off, it's safe for us, healthy and good for the animals. And then, we never know what the future holds for the farm. So he always wants to make sure that whatever we do, depending on where the future takes us, the farm is still sellable to the next family who wants to come in.
I feel like that's a really hard balance to strike of progressing while also wanting to keep some of those historical pieces alive. Because it is. Sometimes it has to be an economic and a health decision. And sometimes it's like, well, we can make it work. But knowing that it can serve the next generation, I feel like is a great lens to look at it through. Now, you mentioned a couple times on the history of the farm, kind of how dairy farming specifically is tied to the economy so closely. I'm wondering if you can expand on that of, for folks who are not as familiar with the dairy industry, or maybe don't have that background, how is it so impacted from what's going on?
I guess, I have to take into consideration on how the farm, on how each owner is part of the farm. So like how my dad does it is, he put in everything into the farm. And so the farm is like, it's his retirement. And so when we were growing up, I'm pretty sure it was 2008 or like 2007 is when it got really hard again. And so like 2008 to, I think when I was about a senior in high school, it was pretty tight. And dad never said anything to us about it. He always kept it between him and mom. And so we never grew up knowing how tight it was. And then obviously like the 90s when he built the parlor, I'm like looking back on pictures now of us. And I was like, Mom, like, why didn't you guys do this to the house? And she's like, we were literally living like as tight as we could. She said we had bought a brand new parlor. We were buying the cows to put back on the farm. I was like, oh, so, for dairy, I think some commodities, when they look at us, they're like, well, you guys have a milk check coming in once or twice a month, like compared to beef guys who, they get their big checks whenever they sell cattle. So like every 6 months or whenever, they sell. And so, and my husband, he's a big beef guy. And so he's learned a lot too coming into ours. And so he said, you guys it must be nice. You get a paycheck every month. And I'm like, yeah, but we have a lot of other expenses that are different than you guys. And like, we're running our facilities twice a day. We have the vacuum pump. We're buying, just like what we need for milking, our iodine, all of our cleaning supplies, because we have to clean the milkers twice a day with all of our chemicals. That runs twice a day. I said, so we have a lot of different overhead costs that other commodities just don't have because of how we do it. And is that we're constantly AIing, and our hired hand help, any industry I know, like your most expensive is you're paying for your employees. But dairy, I would say they probably are the highest on that, just because first off, you're milking either 2 or 3 times a day. So that's 2 hours to 3 hours per milking. So you're paying out your employees all of that. And then on top of that, you're going to have someone there at the farm all day. So after they leave for milking, you're still going to have a herd manager there or someone helping to do the tasks during the day, because we don't just milk and leave. Like we have other, feeding calves, bedding, cleaning. So there's a lot of other little things that I think other industries or just any like consumers don't understand either that we're doing during the day. So that also makes it harder for dairy farmers to have a second job. And like, I know a lot of our friends that are farming, they say that their town job pays for their farming. And when I was growing up, I never understood that because we never had the time for that. But, a lot of them, they'll get up extra early. They'll go chore hogs or they'll go feed their cows. Then they'll go to their town job and they come home, do chores, and they go to bed. But with the dairy, we can't really do that just with all of our other things that we have to do. So when you're dairy farming, you're only dairy farming. You're not going into town to get your, like health insurance for the other jobs. So that does make it super tight, which in the last, I want to say probably 15 years, at least in our state, we've had a lot of growth in on-farm processing. So I think that's really helped the dairy industry for Iowa is so many farmers are trying to have another way for their milk. And so we have a local girl actually, and they built their farm. They're like, she's the second generation and they've always wanted to bottle their own milk. And so that's what they do now. And it's helped their dairy immensely. They do all kinds of stuff from bottling milk to doing ice cream. They have a storefront now. And so quite a few dairies, I would say in Iowa now are trying to diversify, and do that for another income, aside from just the milk side.
Yeah. I think it's really neat to see how the dairy industry has slowly transformed. There's a lot of it that stays the same. But if you look back, even just to the 80s to now, it's so different than it was. And I think, like you said, that's going to continue to happen as people try to innovate and keep those smaller farms diversified and independent. You mentioned the day-to-day being a huge factor in, why dairies work the way that they do. It's just there's so much tie to the physical being there that is required. What does that look like for you, like on your day-to-day schedule and balancing the other things in your life? You have kids, and how does that work for you?
So I'm only part-time at the dairy now just because we had our third daughter 5 months ago. So thankfully I have dad and mom who are very helpful.
Yeah.
And watching the girls and, working around a crazy schedule of 3 kids, and having a husband who runs his own farm. So that also, when we got married, we kind of knew that Brad was going to be at his farm. I was going to be at mine, but we knew eventually we'd have to kind of decide where we would go because we can't be pulled. But before my youngest was born, usually I would milk about 3 to 4 mornings a week. And then my husband would take care of the girls overnight while I was milking, because I'd leave about 3:15. But I'd go milk, I'd come back home, get everybody ready, and then I'd go back to the farm. So my mom she is awesome. She'll watch the girls for me whenever I need to milk or anything like that. Because they live at the dairy. I don't live on the dairy farm. Mm-hmm. But usually I would just drop them off. But it was nice that they were at the farm. So, something happened, or if we were kind of like just had a slow time, I could go in the house and be with the girls. Kind of like a stay-at-home mom, but I wasn't in there, 24/7. But usually, I would help dad during the day with whatever needed done. If we needed to fix something, although mechanics was not my area, I would usually leave that to my dad or to my husband to fix all that stuff. But when I was at full time, I did a lot of the calving, taking care of post-calving cows, doing all of our calf stuff, tagging, moving calves, stuff like that. And then I would do whatever I needed to do during the day with dad, come back at night, milk, and then come home. So some weeks would go really good. I would plan really well and everything would go smooth when I got home. Everybody would be in bed on time. And then the next week just, goes out the window, and supper is mac and cheese, or, we order pizza in town on the way home or something. But usually I would tell Brad, I'm like, just go with the flow. Like, this week we're doing corn silage, so we're going to be eating pizza all week. Just know that Ivana's not going to go to bed till 10 o'clock or 11. Sorry. But yeah, I've learned, and especially just growing up on the farm too with dad, we kind of learned, like, we'll have a plan, but more than likely, if you plan for something down to a T, it's never going to go that way because a cow is going to need bread, or, someone's going to call and say, I'm sick, I can't milk tonight. So then my dad would get called out to milk on his night off or something like that. So, yeah, I try and teach my girls young. Now they're not quite old enough to completely understand, but I'm trying to teach them, with being the dairy and my husband's farm. As farm kids, sometimes life isn't going to go perfect, guys. We might miss this birthday party. We might not be able to go to this event because it's corn silage or it's planting time. But we're just trying to instill in them, like the values of farming and all the great things that they can learn from it. And yeah, some day-to-days aren't pretty and fun, but when they get older, I think they'll really appreciate growing up with such diverse farms that they have here.
Yeah, I feel like flexibility is a huge asset when you're in that season of life of little kids and lots of things going on and just the busy every day to day of farming. So when you came back then and you made that decision, was that something that you guys kind of knew what it would look like between you and your dad, or is that evolved over time of what your role was?
I mean, when I told him I wanted to come home, it was kind of implied that we would, well, at the time I wasn't with my husband, I was single, but so I kind of thought, like, oh, I'll find a guy who wants to come to my farm, like, which, in reality, that rarely happens because, most guys that are farmers want to go to their farm. So, and then, so when I told my dad that, it was kind of implied that I was going to come home, I was going to buy the farm, and I was going to farm. And then I met my husband in college. Like I say, he's from the same county. So, he was like, well, I'm going to farm my farm. I'm like, that's fine. Like, you're only 20 minutes away. We can do it. And then, we get married and I was like, can you come and help me? Like, Dad needs a little bit of extra help tonight with corn silage. We're down a wagon. Can you come drive? And he was like, well, I'm doing corn silage up here. I was like, okay. So then we were pregnant with our second, and we sat down with our parents and we were like, okay, we need to really decide where we're going with this. Cause Brad, their farm, they're discussing things on if they want to expand, what they want to do. And then we were kind of at the point where, did we want to put robots in? Do we want to continue with this? And so Dad and I, talked about if we do it this way, what it'll cost if we do it this way. And so in the end, Brad and I discussed it and we said that, we will move up to their farm. And I said, I don't want to leave the dairy though. Like, the dairy's, very important to me. I grew up on it. I said a really strong connection to it. And it just so happened that about a month or two after we made our decision, Iowa passed the law that we can sell raw milk. And so I said, well, maybe this is a sign that we can finally sell milk, because my dad and I have talked for 15 years about selling our own milk, but it just wasn't financially feasible for us at the time. We were milking too many cows. And that building a facility like that and having just one person run it is almost impossible. So we decided to have a small raw milk herd when we move. We have no idea when we're moving, but that's, we're making all the plans and like having all of our goals and stuff. So I'll still have my dairy. I just won't have it at my family farm, which is still really bittersweet to say, because I still get to have cows, and like I'm going to take cows from my dad's farm. So it'll still be like the genetics that my dad has always had, but not my family farm. But my dad does keep telling me, he's like, I know it's not your family farm. He's like, but you're with your husband now. You can build your own family farm here. Like, this is now your new legacy. And I was like, yes, it is. It's just hard to leave something that like I came home from college from, but it is fun to build something up from the ground with my husband and my kids now, once we decide the day that we're moving.
Yeah. Well, that's really exciting to have a path forward like that. Like you said, it's hard when you kind of have these conflicting things where he's farming and you're farming and it's just not a new path forward. But being able to bring pieces of your background into that will be really cool. I did not know that Iowa passed that you guys can sell raw milk. That's really exciting and cool.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. They changed it in 23. There's quite a few rules to it. So you have to milk less than 10 cows, which for people who don't know dairy, they were like, well, that's not very many cows. And I was like, well, just wait. You know, like if a cow, like right now on our farm, my cows give an average of like, what I'm trying to jump my numbers here, like 10 gallons a day. And I was like, what am I going to do with 100 gallons of milk a day?
Yeah.
A lot of milk. So
Yeah.
I'm like, really, you don't need 10 cows to do it. So, but yeah, like they have different rules and stuff with it, which obviously you should, by selling raw milk. So, and I'm a strong believer in food choice. So I love that Iowa has that option now. You can't sell it in the store, but I would say that most people who want raw milk don't care if they go to the store and buy it. They want to come to the farm and see, you know, like where they're getting their milk from. They want to see the family. They want the whole story behind it, which is another thing that I love because I started our social media account on the farm. Obviously my dad had to okay it because he was like, well, what are you sharing? And I'm like, nothing. I'm not printing your bank statements, Dad. I'm, you know, showing our story, and so he's enjoyed it now. But I told him, I said, you know, this raw milk thing, social media and sharing stories, this will be, I think, really good for farmers, especially people who want to get into farming like me, who are just like getting pulled in different directions, but come from a farm and still want that tie to it. This is a good way for like us to still be connected to the dairy industry. So I'm really excited for that.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting to see the shift because, you know, in dairy, it's always been efficiency is everything in dairy. And now when you are talking about, you know, less than 10 cows, that kind of efficiency looks completely different when you're marketing your own milk and bottling your own. So I think it's going to cause some really interesting shifts in agriculture just in general. What do you think, or have you guys seen any of those already in Iowa as this became legal?
Yeah. So we have one of my dad's really, really good friends, actually. He does that because he has a show herd. So he only has a few. And so basically he was just dumping his milk down the drain. It's essentially what he was doing. And he hated doing it, but he loved having his cows because he would go to the state shows and he would even go up to Dairy Expo too. He has a really good genetic line. And so then when this passed, he said, well, I used to be a dairy farmer, and then he sold out, but like I said, kept his show herd. So he started selling milk to people. There's another farm north of us, not too far, about 45 minutes. And they also have a show herd, and they bottle milk, and I follow them on social media. I've never had their milk because I just can't. It's so hard for me to go out and buy someone else's milk when I know I can go to my farm and get it for free out of the tank. But their big thing is banana milk. His wife loves flavored, like trying different flavors. And so she's been doing different flavors of banana, and people are loving her banana milk. So this spring, once this Iowa crazy winter/spring clears up, we're going to start going to some raw milk dairies, just see how everybody does it. Cause I know that everyone does it a different way. But I told my husband and my dad was behind me on this too. I said, growing up on a grade A facility, like I have with a dad who, you know, crosses his T's and dots his I's on everything. I said, I have to have a grade A facility. Nothing against people who do it the old fashioned way. You can still have safe milk that way, but it would be so hard for me to change that way because I grew up learning all that from my dad. And so I told that to my husband. He was like, well, I didn't know that was a thing. I'm like, oh yeah, like grade A is what dad is, like all the lines. And he was like, oh, I didn't even know that. And dad's like, well, he's like, I understand that, like growing up where you did. And I said, yeah. So that would put a little bit more financial on us for starting up. But like I said, it'd be so hard for me to do it any other way, because that's just how I've always grown up.
Yeah.
But
I think that's a really interesting point, though, of, there's so much language that farmers know about their product that the average consumer does not. They just go to the store and buy milk, and it's milk. It's like the options are 1%, 2% skim and whole, that's it. But there's all these different variations. So I think there's a lot of education that's going to have to happen for people to really understand their product and what they want and why they're buying it and all of that. Is that something that you think that will be a big role as you build your operation, or is that something you think will be part of what you guys build into your story?
So, yeah, I mean, technically right now, since we ship to Prairie Farms and our checkoff dollars go to our checkoff dollars, the stance of the United States checkoff is raw milk is not safe. And so not that it would be, like illegal or anything for me to post on our social media that raw milk is safe. If you're getting it from a reputable source, they're following the correct standards. I'm just torn if I should say that or not, because technically, our milk does go to a processing plant that sells it after it's pasteurized. But once I do move to just raw, that will be something that I want to educate on. I wish that our checkoff would share that it isn't unsafe. Not all raw milk is unsafe, but that is their stance, and it's been their stance for decades that milk should be pasteurized. So like I said, I want to share that it is safe, and when I do have a lot of people come to us right now because they know it's legal in Iowa. So they come to our dairy and they say, hey, can we get raw milk? And I'm like, oh, I am sorry. Our dairy is contracted with the co-op. And so legally I can't sell you this milk. And they ask me like where to go or what they should do. And so I do have like kind of like a checklist for them. I'm like, well, personally, I said, if you want to buy raw milk, I would make sure you look at the farm first to make sure that the farmer is taking care of their animals, that the animals look healthy. Because if you have an unhealthy animal, you're not going to have the highest quality milk. Cell count, all that kind of stuff. So I always am like, just make sure that the cows are healthy, make sure they are using the correct cleaning products for all of their equipment, and that they're getting that milk into a cooling fridge or a cooling tank, or however they do it, the quickest route possible, because then less pathogens grow. I'm like, and I always tell them, like, make sure you start slow. Don't go get 2 gallons and down 2 gallons of raw milk in a week. Trust me. Like, I'm like, you might get sick and you'll think it's bad milk. It's not. It's just, it's a lot different than store-bought milk. It's pasteurized milk. So, start slow with drinking raw milk. And I said, you'll be fine. I said, I've been on raw milk since I was 1, and my 2 oldest daughters have been on raw milk since they were 11 months old, and they are perfectly healthy. But I was like, just starting, if you're going to start now in your 30s, go slow, because it's a big difference. I'm like, and you'll probably drink less milk than you do at the store, because, depending on the type of cow you get it from versus, Jersey or Ayrshire, it's going to be a really rich milk. So, and full fat. So you probably aren't going to want to drink a whole cup at a time, because it'll be a lot different for you compared to, if you're buying 2% or whatever it is at the store.
Right. I think it's interesting how, it's changing how people are interested in the raw milk, and knowing, there's all the benefits of it, and how we have a lot of regulations, and the national stance on it is that we're not going to talk about it, basically. And that makes it kind of hard for smaller farms to get started in that because they don't have the support of that nationwide backing. Is that something that you think will change, or what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think checkoffs, any of the state checkoffs or like the division checkoffs would ever support raw milk. I was on I used to be a board member for the Iowa division for our dairy checkoff. And since I'm not full time anymore, I stepped down from that position. I wanted to make sure that it was being served by someone who was more full time on the dairies. I feel like maybe their studies they're getting might not be as up to date as they could be anymore. But also, as someone who, I kind of was a little disappointed that we didn't have more dairy farmers talking to our legislation when they did make this law. I think it's great the law passed, but there were some parts of it that I just was like, well, as a dairy farmer wanting safe milk and it being fought so hard against by our checkoff dollars, I said, why didn't our checkoff come in with our legislation and other dairy farmers and try to make the bill together? They could have added some different things to it, taken some things out, and they could have made it safe for everybody. Or safer, not safe. They could make it a little bit safer. Sure. The first thing that my dad and I were a little bit concerned about when we saw this come into effect was it said 10 or less cows, which automatically puts out basically any dairy that's permitted here to state. So it kind of threw out any of those dairies, which it's okay. But we were concerned about backyard farmers. I was like, this is when the girls who love cows that live, just a little bit out of town might say, oh, I can get a cow from the sale barn. It's like, well, there's a reason that cow's at the sale barn. It either has, bad mastitis, or it's just an old cow, low production, bad feed. Like, there's a lot of reasons that cows go to the sale barn. A farmer knows why he takes them there. So I wouldn't go to the sale barn and get your cow. But I said, they might just be going on YouTube and looking up, how do I milk a cow? And it's like, well, do you know a cow has to have a calf every year to keep producing milk? Or do you know that she can't live just on grass alone? You have to have like some supplements. And so we were concerned about that, which we haven't really seen anything like that pop up for milk, which is really good, because that's what I was afraid of, because that really could lead to someone getting sick on milk. And if one person gets sick on milk, that's all the dairy industry really needs, is one person to get sick on it, and then they'll start sharing about it, and then it looks bad on everybody. Even people like our farm, who it goes to a co-op and it gets processed and it gets pasteurized and everything. But if they would have brought all of us in, I think they could have done the bill a little bit different. I think they mirrored it a little bit to other states like Missouri. I know that they were already legal to sell before us. So I think they might have just mirrored their bills, which is fine. But I wish they would have taken some more dairy farmers' suggestions and thoughts in when they were creating the bill.
Yeah, it's hard when some of that gets lost in the legislative process just because folks aren't willing to work together or aren't even aware that something's being passed because you're doing the day-to-day on your farm.
Does your business accept online payments, credit cards, or bank transfers? You're going to want to know about a tool called ThriveCart. I've been using this tool on my own website and on clients' websites for years and have been so happy with it. ThriveCart is a software tool you can use to design online checkouts with every option you can dream up. You can sell physical and digital products, connect to loads of other softwares you use for your website, accept payments, email marketing, and more. This is the most powerful tool that I use and the lowest cost one for my business. I recommend it for anyone who accepts online payments, who wants to increase their revenue or average order value on any type of product that you sell. In my show notes, you can find an affiliate link that I have for ThriveCart that gets you a great deal on a one-time payment, no subscription, and also allows me to earn affiliate income from this tool that I really enjoy and recommend. If you have any questions about how ThriveCart could work for your business, feel free to shoot me an email and I'd be happy to chat with you about it. Now, back to the show.
I think it'll be really interesting to see where that goes and how it affects the dairy industry as a whole because of consumer choice. Like you said, it matters. And being able to give people choices is always really cool. Well, that's really exciting. I guess as far as raw milk and buying local, is that something that you think is just going to expand, or what's that going to do for us in agriculture?
I think that's really the next wave that's going to come through. I mean, it's already since COVID, I think that's already kind of come. Chop Local was created by my neighbors actually, and I know that their business has just really taken off since COVID too, because you get the whole story of where your meat comes from. And growing up on a farm, we knew where our meat came from. We would pick a cow out each year, and that's who would go to the butcher. So I think, buying local, pairing up with a farmer and a couple other families to butcher a cow and split it. Because in college, I would always bring meat to my roommates to eat on. So we'd have to buy meat in college. I'd bring it home whenever I came home. And they would always say that they wish that their families could do that, but they said it was just too much. I said, too much money to do it? Because I said it really costs less. And she said, no, it's too much meat. Like we don't have all that freezer space. And I was like, oh, that's true. And so I love now that there's the option, like Chop Local. You can still buy local or know the story and just buy what you need and buy quarters now or whatever that is. And then we have a lot of people around us that are doing the chickens. And so you can buy your eggs local. And then obviously like only in the summer can you do the farmers markets or like the spring. But I know that a lot of people, I want to say it's up by the Iowa City area. There's like a year-round greenhouse trying kind of a thing. So I was like, well, that would be nice, except for that's not going to feed probably all the people who are going to be interested in it. But I think people really want to know where their food's coming from, or at least know that the animal is being taken care of. I think I saw that more when I was doing social media with the farm than anything else. Everyone was more concerned about the safety and the health of the animal and how they were being treated. And so they would say, well, I guess I'll buy the milk that you ship to your co-op because I can see that they're being taken care of. You love your animals. You're always making sure that they have the right food and you have a nutritionalist. And I was like, every dairy is like that. But if you want to buy our milk, that's great. Please go ahead and do it. But I'm like, every dairy does this. I'm not trying to say that only our farm does it. But I think when you can see the story behind it and the family and who exactly you are supporting, rather than just supporting a big meat packing company, that's what really draws the consumer into buying from you.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot more awareness of that as like documentaries come out about all of big food and big ag, which obviously are not entirely wholesomely true. But it's, people do these like boycott Amazon because they don't agree with their principles and things like that. What is it that you think that people need to know more about the dairy industry that maybe they don't know that would help them find that, loyalty or trust?
So it doesn't matter how many cows you have. I mean, we're a small dairy. I mean, if you tell anybody else, they'd be like, you milk 150. It's like, it's really not that many. I would say, honor if you milk 150 or, the guys like out west who milk 5,000 or 20,000, they still are caring for their animals, because no matter what, if you don't care for your animal, no matter what size of farm, if you don't care for it, it's not going to produce milk. And if they don't produce milk, then we're out of a job. There's no pretty way to say it, but in the end, a farmer has to be worried about their paycheck. We do love our animals, and obviously that's top on priority. We always top on the list, but in the end, we have to make sure that we're still making enough money to farm tomorrow. So I know that there's going to be activists that say, well, why can't you just keep that cow at a different spot on the farm? And it's like, well, because she's not producing milk, but I still have to feed her. So she's costing me money every day, but not making her stay. So we do care for our animals, and there's a reason that we call animals, but we have to make sure we're making money to care for those animals and to feed them the correct way, to make sure they're getting the right medicine, to make sure that they're getting good quality bedding, and we have electricity to put fans on them when it's 100 degrees in the summer. Like, there's a whole list of things that we make sure that we care for our animals, but we have to make sure that we're also making money on it. And I think people don't like that. They don't like, or certain consumers don't like that the farmers are only concerned about money. It's like, well, we're not only concerned about money, but it does take money to run a farm. And if we don't have it, then all the animals get sold. So no matter the size, we're still taking care of our animals. Like on those big dairies, they have their own vets hired. I mean, there's just a vet at those big dairies all the time. If I could do that, that would be awesome. I wouldn't worry about anything, but I cannot afford to hire a vet on a 150 cow dairy. But, from the littlest dairy to the largest, there are so many little things that we're making sure the cows are taken care of that I think consumers just don't know the little things. Like we said at the beginning, bedding. My dad has gone through so many different types of bedding to find the perfect one. And I think everybody just thought, oh, sand, cool. And it's like, no, like we went through lots of options and like figured out which one was financially best for us and which one kept the cell count down and which one was easy to put in the barn. And sand isn't the best for other farms. So that's why, I always tell people, if you want a tour, please come, call me. I would love to give you a tour of our dairy, show you the ins and outs. You can milk a cow, you can whatever you want to do, just getting them on the farm also too, I think is good. And I wish more farmers, I think it's getting to that point, but I wish more farmers would be more open and trusting of people coming on. I just think that for a while there with that undercover stuff, it really made farmers fearful of people coming on. And so I think if we're open and trustworthy, that they'll reciprocate that. And then we can really show people, any industry. I know some industries it's harder with the sickness and stuff, but just letting people on our farm and showing them around, answering any questions they have, being open and honest, because we're not trying to hide stuff on our farms. We're not. We just want to make sure we're taking care of our animals. And it's like for turkey guys, yeah, they don't want a bunch of people walking through the sheds. I understand that. But if anybody wants to come on our farm, I always say, yep, please come out. I'll show you whenever you want.
Yeah. Well, I think the other piece of the animal welfare that maybe is not fun to talk about is, what would farms look like if we didn't cull animals? Like, you can't just keep them all.
Yeah.
That results negative or poor living situations for all of them instead. And that's just, a realistic point of view that people don't realize. Like,
and they still go into the food industry too. I always tell people, I'm like, we didn't, it goes to the cell barn and a packing plant buys them and they become, either hamburger at McDonald's or like your lower end steak houses usually are who buy dairy cows, to be honest. But yeah, I'm like, they're not going to waste. Like the ag industry uses everything. We are probably one of the least wasteful industries in America, I would say. We recycle so much, we reuse things. And like I said, like with any cull animal, I mean, you can go to the sale barn and you can see culled cow, beef, dairy, there's goats. I mean, anything gets culled and you can buy it if you want to take it home and and raise it, that's fine. But it is going to end up in the food chain for consumers. So,
yeah. Well, I think it's just really encouraging to hear like stories of farms of different sizes and how you've found success and kind of what your plans forward for your specific lifestyle are. One question I always like to ask guests is what makes you positive or excited about the future in ag? You know, you chose this industry and this career path for a reason. What makes you excited about the future of it?
It sounds cheesy, but for me, it's family. I come from a farming family. I married into a farming family, and our girls love being with any of the animals, whatever farm it is we're at. So just knowing that I get to raise my family on land that's been in our family for generations on both sides it's an honor to be able to do that, because not many people my age can say that, you know, they're on their family farm, but also that we're being trusted too. Like knowing that so many people I run into in town, I don't even know some of them, and they'll say, "Oh, you're so-and-so. Do you guys sell milk?" And I'm like, "Not yet, but please keep watching." And so there's people who are already like just trusting us to buy our products. And that makes me feel that we're doing something right, that people still want to come to small farmers or beginning farmers like us. We don't know everything. And my husband and I, we ask our dads questions all the time. We don't think that we know it all. But that they're trusting and they want to support farmers, no matter if they're local or not. They want to still support us and buy American farming industries, meat, milk, eggs, things like that.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your story on the podcast, Madi. If folks want to follow you or learn more about what you're doing, where can they find you at?
Yep. So I post on our social media, Facebook and Instagram on our farm, Hilltop Dairy Inc. Hopefully getting back into it more. It's hard with a 5-month-old right now, but trying to get back into it more. But yeah, that's where we share. We try and share like some recipes, where our milk goes, and then a little bit of our family as well. So
fun. Well, everybody be sure to check Madi out on social media and watch for their raw milk announcement when it comes. I'm sure that'll be exciting. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed spending time with us today, please take a moment to review the podcast on Apple Podcasts or join the conversation on social media. Do you have a topic you would like to discuss or know someone with a story to share? Apply to be a guest on the podcast at farmingonpurpose.com. You can follow the host of Farming on Purpose, Lexi, on your favorite social media platforms for more content by searching for Farming on Purpose. And remember, if you look around your table and aren't inspired by the people there, it's time to find a new seat.